Okay, so I think Anne, not Anne, yeah, Anne has, not Anne Andrex has been, has seen a couple of my programs before. So this is a program the Red Bank Library is doing. I'm Judy Clavens Junta. I'm a retired dietitian. And this program has been created by the Rutgers Extension Family and Community Health Sciences Department. And it's basically a series on functional foods. And what are functional foods? They're foods that basically are thought to have a potential health benefit when eaten on a regular basis, which could be almost all foods. And there's also no real specific definition for that. So it's not regulated by the government, but there is sort of an industry and a health industry understanding. And there's a lot of research to back up the functionality of some of these foods. And tonight we're going to talk about mushrooms. Okay, so of course it doesn't get started. Hold on a second. Okay. So the objectives are to increase your knowledge about historical processing and preparation of mushrooms and the facts about those and classifications, understand the current research and health benefits of mushrooms, and also identify the recommendations, including of how to include mushrooms in a plant-based diet, which is one of the real focuses of this program. So parts, the cap, of course, is the top of the mushroom, and the stipe is the stem. The gills are on the underside of the cap, and they're responsible for the production of the mushroom spores. And this is typically what we see. There are all different kinds of mushrooms, but this is pretty typical of the kind of most of the mushrooms we see when we go to the store. The ring, which I think obviously the mushrooms when they're harvested are cut above the ring, is the tissue which covers the immature fungus when it's sprouting, and it's what remains as it grows. So it's not seen in most retail situations. So mycology is the study of mushrooms and other fungi. So a mycologist is one who studies mushrooms. Fungi, as I said, reproduce by spores, and they're really not a plant, and we'll discuss that in another few slides. There's a discussion of their classification. They lack chlorophyll. They don't, plants have chlorophyll and plants have seeds, and they don't have either of those. And they're also the fruit of an organism which grows either in the ground or in something else that is living or dead. And a fungus needs organic matter that is made from living things to grow. And they don't use it, since they don't have photosynthesis, they can't use that as a way to feed themselves. So they rely on whatever host they attach to. And it's actually defined as the fruiting body of a macrofungus. And it's macrofungus because it's large enough to be seen by the human eye. So at the bottom, there's this quote from a mycologist that said, "Have you thanked the fungus today?" And until I did a little bit of background research and read the notes on this particular slide, I didn't even have a clue about how much mushrooms really do. So they take carbon and nitrogen from the air, and they store carbon in mineral products in the soil. And soil that has mushrooms in it is a better, it's a better catch-all for the carbon dioxide in the air. So it really can help with global warming. They also have these little tendrils that form structure and aid the fertility of the soil because they help to make, help the mineral products go from different plants within the soil. They recycle nutrients from vegetable residue, and that's the decaying and the decomposition that they're responsible from. So they're really important in that respect. If you think about, the fact that they're putting things back into the life cycle. And with all of this stuff, with all the things that those are previous things that they do, and the enhancing the exchange of nutrients, they enhance plant productivity. They also serve as a food source for humans. And they also can be what they call biopesticides. They actually help to regulate plant and insect populations, and they can be a natural insecticide. So it makes sense to say, have you thanked the fungus today? Because they're really so much more of an integral part of the whole cycle of agriculture and the soil health and things like that, that I really, myself personally didn't know. So historical perspective. They were used in some ways as early as 5,000 or 5,500 BC, but actually some of the information that we have about how long ago they were used was discovered by in 1991. They had found a Stone Age, the skeleton of a Stone Age. No, actually, it was not completely skeleton, because it had been in an ice. It had been frozen, and along with the Stone Age man that they found a couple of different types of mushrooms. One which they believe was used to make fire. And other types which they're speculating were used for medicinal purposes. So that's maybe as far back as the Stone Age, but as early as 3000 BC, we began to see indications of that. And in the writings of Euripides and Hippocrates and Euripides, they both refer to mushroom poisonings, actually, but they refer to mushrooms. And the Greeks and the Romans talked about the joys as well as the dangers of eating, and also confusion about the origination due to their lack of visible seeds. And that's the whole thing about that they populate by spores, but that was for them, a very sophisticated idea. They knew how plants had seeds, planted the seeds, the plant grew. So they actually thought that mushrooms might be the ferments of the earth or the products of thunder. You know, that's just one of the things that they thought. Oh, hi, Linda, I saw you just joined us. Hi, Judy. Hi. So mushrooms are delicacies in European cookbooks starting in the Middle Ages, actually. And the study of mycology began between the 14th and 16th centuries. And so mushrooms, so that they were something, they became really important in the study of food and during the Renaissance. And in the 17th and 18th centuries, there was work to prove that fungi developed from spores. So that moves studies of mushrooms forward. So they figured out, some agriculture, some paleontologist or mycologist figured that out. And before this time, as I said, there were various theories that they reduced it from seeds or regenerated spontaneously. And in the 19th century, Elias Fries compiled and organized a system to classify mushrooms, and believe it or not, we use that classification to this day. So it really hasn't been any need. Anybody has felt the need to revise that. There is a theme throughout history of talking about the dangers of mushrooms, and we'll talk about that a little, but I think everybody's sort of aware of that. And there was a story that in 1767, a musician at the court of Versailles went mushroom picking with his family, and he picked a whole lot of wild mushrooms outside of Paris. He showed them to his chef, and the chef said to him, "Those are poisonous, don't eat them." And they ate them anyway. And believe it or not, I mean, this is sort of a little macabre, but the entire family died except for one child. So it is a theme throughout any discussion of mushrooms to indicate that you really have to be careful, because not all mushrooms are safe to eat. So, and that's, important word about mushroom safety. They're toxic, some are toxic, and some of the toxic ones, some of the non-toxic ones resemble the toxic ones. So if you should really only obtain your mushrooms from a reliable vendor or somebody that is certified to harvest them, and to be very careful about exactly where you get your mushrooms. And I'm going to assume, since I've never heard otherwise, that mushrooms you get in the supermarket or the grocery store have been fairly well vetted, and I'm sure they come from a farmer or somebody who is growing them that knows what they're doing. So mushrooms have been on Earth. Hold on, I just lost the slide. Mushrooms have been on Earth since, let me just go back. Did I miss a slide? No. Okay. Been on Earth for 140,000, 140,000 different kinds of mushrooms, and only 10% of those species are known. And of those 14,000 known species, approximately 1/2 are thought to be edible. And that 700 of them are also thought to have significant medicinal purposes. And we'll talk about the research that goes into making that statement. So 2 groups of mushrooms, and I hope I'm going to pronounce this right, the Ascomycetes and the Basidiomycetes, Mycetis, I don't know, Mycetis, I think, because that's how you pronounce it. And this is very basic information. Of course, there's way more classifications, but we're going to start with the very basic thing. And the Ascomycetes are spores are produced inside, like the morels you see in the top picture, and truffles that you're aware of. And the Basidiomycetes, they're produced outside underneath the cap, as we discussed, where the spores are underneath the cap. So button is the most common of the Basidiomycetes, and chanterelles, cremini, portobellos, those are all Basidiomycetes. So these are the most popular, is the Basidiomycetes, the white mushrooms, the white button mushrooms are really actually the most popular. Portobellos, and the cremini. The button mushrooms have actually been cultivated since the 1700s. And portobello mushrooms are the largest of the white and cremini cap type mushrooms, some of them measuring 6 inches in diameter. And they have a deep meat-like flavor. So a lot of people actually use them as a meat substitute. So the Taki mushrooms are tan to dark brown, and they have an umbrella-shaped cap also with curved stems, which you have to remove because it's sort of tough. And actually, I make something called shiitake bacon, where I take off the stems, I slice up the caps, and I just roast them at 300 degrees till they're dried with salt, pepper, a little olive oil, and smoked paprika. And it has that really, we'll talk about the umami flavor, and it's really a really tasty dish. So also maitake. Their mushrooms are also popular in the United States, and their appearance is a little bit different. You can see them up here. It's a lot different, actually. And they have that riffling fan-shaped structure with no caps. They're the largest fungi. They can weigh actually up to 25 pounds. And as you see, they're bush-like in appearance, and they're actually known as hen of the woods, because I guess if you look at them a certain way, they resemble a small hen. They also have a distinctive aroma and a rich, woody taste. So a word about truffles. They're Ascomycetes, and they're sought after for their unique and delicious taste, and they're a delicacy. They're currently about over $1,000 per pound. And why? Because they're very hard to grow. They're a challenge to find, and they don't last long. They only last 7 to 10 days. And we'll talk a little bit about storage of mushrooms. So other mushrooms can last longer than that. And they usually grow under trees and are generally not cultivated, though I think they're beginning to cultivate them in the United States. And as you probably know, in the past, they used to use pigs to find them because apparently they smell like a male pig, but now they are using dogs trained to find mussels, trained for the smell. And they're white in northern Italy, and they're black in truffles are found in France. So as I was saying, I was talking about the shiitake bacon that I make, and because of that umami taste, we have sweet, salt, bitter, sour, and we have this fifth taste, umami, which is a savory or brothy or meaty type of flavor. And mushrooms have that, which is why they're often used as a replacement. And umami actually means savory, brothy, or meaty. So then they use it as a replacement for meat, substituted meat or in addition to. And the darker the mushroom, the more umami. And shiitakes and portobellos, morels, porcinis, dried and cooked, have more umami than fresh ones, actually. So that also might explain why my shiitake bacon has that real meaty taste to it, because it's dried out. And other foods that have umami taste, cheeses, cured meats, and other fermented products have that umami taste as well. If anybody has any questions at any point, either put it in the chat. Oh, somebody did put things in the chat box. Hold on. Got it back. Okay. So we're all good with sound? Okay. Close this. Go here. Okay. So how are mushrooms grown? Well, they're not planted in the ground the way other things are. They're grown in a substrate, and the substrate is the substance that cover that in which they grow, and it gives them the food that they need. It's always a carefully controlled environment, and as I said, the substrate provides a nutritional balance for them. And so they're mixed in and placed in the trays. The spawn, which are the seedlings, are mixed in and placed in the trays of substrate. Then casing is spread over the mixture, and that's basically peat moss. And then pining, which is when they push up through the substrate, and you can see that in the top picture where they're pining. And then of course they're harvested by hand, and you can see that in the bottom picture. Of course, these are not wild mushrooms. These are grown on a mushroom farm. And they grow in about 16 to 35 day cycle, and they grow all year round. So that makes them a really financially stable product for agriculture. Okay. So care and handling of mushrooms. So you want to select firm, dry mushrooms, no sign of moisture outside or even in the package. And they should be dry, but not dried out. And you'll see them look firm and plump. And I know I usually buy mushrooms in the bin, but if you buy mushrooms in a package, they're usually wrapped, and you just make sure that there's no moisture underneath and that they look plump. You can store bulk or loose mushrooms in a paper bag or in the original package and refrigerate for up to 1 week. So don't take them out of their original package, whatever package they came in, or put them in a paper bag is the best way to store them in the refrigerator. To clean them, you use a soft brush to remove any traces of peat moss or soil, and rinse quickly and pat dry. Don't soak them in water because it can toughen them up. And you should also clean them only right before you use them. So do not wash mushrooms and then store them. Don't wash them until you are going to use them. Any questions about any of that? So you can freeze sauteed mushrooms, by the way. You cannot freeze fresh mushrooms. So I guess sauteed mushrooms, and maybe if you have cooked cook the portobellos, but you can freeze those, but you cannot freeze fresh mushrooms. So there are many different ways to prepare mushrooms. You can saute them, you can grill or broil them, you can microwave them, you can roast them. Grilling them, you usually use the larger capped type, which is the portobello, and you brush them with oil and 4 to 6 minutes on each side. And microwaving, you season, cover them for 6 minutes, and also sliced mushrooms can be microwaved in a bowl for 2 to 3 minutes. And you could roast some with a little bit of oil at 450 degrees for approximately 20 minutes. So there are many different ways. And sauteing them, you would just chop them, have them, and then saute them in a wok or a frying pan with a little bit of oil. So, and I think I love mushrooms personally, and I think that they taste great, however you make them. And broiled on a grill, by the way, and put between a bun like a hamburger is a perfect way to enjoy them during the summer or whenever you grill. So this is fresh mushrooms. These are fresh mushrooms, by the way, from a Portland, Oregon farmer's market. So there's been a significant growth in mushroom production in the last 30 to 40 years, almost like a 7% yearly growth. It's one of the fastest growing produce categories in the US. China is the largest producer behind the EU. And also, now I didn't quite understand this and I didn't do the research. We export them, but Canada exports to us. So I guess it's the type of mushroom that we grow that we export, and Canada is the largest exporter to the US, Mexico, and China is a distant second. So Canada and Mexico send stuff to us. Mushrooms are grown in almost every state in the United States. So the increased volume in sales, California has the highest growth rates. And I'm not sure exactly where, but as I mentioned, they're starting to grow truffles in the US. And I don't know exactly where, but it makes sense it might be California because they're really increasing their volume and sales. Oh, actually, I just saw that Pennsylvania, 60% of US production. So this is where we talked about plant, not plant. So mycologists believe that fungi, which mushrooms are a type, are really a third food kingdom as opposed to animal or plant. Why? Because they really don't match any of the other attributes of plants. They certainly aren't animals, and they don't match attributes of plants. They lack chlorophyll, so they have no photosynthesis process. So they don't make their own food through ingestion as animals and plants do. Their food is decaying material, which is not true of other plants. They also contain a different kind of fiber than plants do. It's called chitin. It's an insoluble fiber. And interestingly enough, one of the other places you find chitin is in the exoskeletons of insects and crustaceans. So it is definitely, in terms of food we grow, a unique kind of insoluble fiber. It has no cholesterol. Cholesterol, as you know, it gives cells structure, but instead they have a sterol called ergosterol to maintain the cell membrane. So in every way, they are very, very different than plants. And what was I going to say? And, you know, so they're really lobbying for, to classify them as a third food kingdom. So the nutritional value of mushrooms, they are low calorie and low fat. A 1 cup serving has only 20 calories. And of course, whatever you might add to it when you cook. They have vitamins and minerals, though it is dependent on the type of mushroom. So again, we're going to talk about variety because you want to eat variety of mushroom to get all the different minerals and vitamins that are available. And in general, they're a good source of selenium, copper, niacin, pantothenic acid, which is a B vitamin, and potassium. But only a small amount of B12, and I mention that because it's a source of B12, but it really isn't for vegetarians or vegans. They really can't rely on mushrooms, but it is one way that they can get some of their B12. And this potassium is fairly significant amount for those. Some people are on a potassium restricted diet. It's 500 milligrams per cup of cooked mushrooms, but they have a lot of minerals and vitamins depending on the type. And they're a low calorie, low fat food. So vitamin D and mushrooms. Despite the important role of vitamin D in our health, many people are deficient. And in fact, it is considered a global, the deficiency is considered globally, and it's a big concern of healthcare professionals. And vitamin D helps with absorption of calcium, helps to prevent osteomalacia in adults and kids. It supports muscle function, it supports immune function, it has other roles as well. Now, we do produce vitamin D by exposure to the sun, but we also get it from animal sources. Oily fish, milk products, and vegetables also contain vitamin D. But the sources are important, and it's estimated, as I said, that 1 billion people worldwide are vitamin D deficient, and it is a shortfall nutrient. So mushrooms have the ability to have a significant amount of vitamin D, and this is sort of interesting. They get it by exposure to UV light, which is how we make vitamin D. So it's an interesting thing, an interesting fact that if you expose them to UV light, they develop a much larger amount of per serving of vitamin D. The UV light, with UV light, they will have 446 IU of vitamin D per 3 ounces, and without, only 10 IUs of vitamin D. And for comparison, 1 cup of milk has 117 IUs. So compare a serving, 3 ounces of mushrooms, which will give you 446 IUs of vitamin D, to milk, which will only give you 117 IU. You can see how they are can be a really important source of vitamin D. And some mushroom farmers in the US, Ireland, and the Netherlands and Australia have initiated exposing fresh mushrooms to UV radiation so that they can increase the amount of vitamin D in the mushrooms. And they're looking into this practice with dried mushrooms. They do this right now with mushrooms as they're growing, but they're looking to see if exposing dried mushrooms to UV light would also increase their vitamin D content. And this is a good way for vegetarians who are vegans to get vitamin D if they don't eat any animal products like milk or dairy or other sources of vitamin D in the diet. So the amino acid ergothioneine, I had this pronounced, ergothioneine, is an essential amino acid. So when you talk about essential amino acids, we can't make them. The body doesn't make them. And they have, so we need to consume them. They're a very good source, of this amino acid is our oyster, maitake, and shiitake mushrooms, and they contain some of the highest amounts among mushrooms. There are a few other sources of this amino acid: black and red beans, oat bran, kidney beans, the organ kidneys, some of the organs of kidney and liver, and and they're very, very powerful antioxidants. So it's something that we need to have. And as I said, one of the main ways we can get this is through mushrooms. They're a moderate source of fiber, with some types providing more than others. White button mushrooms have the least amount, 1.9 grams per cup. Oyster mushrooms have 2 grams of fiber per cup. Portobellos have 2.7. Shiitake have 3.2 grams. And if you compare that to vegetables and fruits, blueberries have 3.6 grams. But broccoli is a powerhouse with 5.1 grams of fiber per cup. So, but they're reasonable. The darker the mushroom, the more fiber that it tends to be in it. And it is an insoluble fiber. That's the chitin that we talked about. Okay, let's go to the next slide. So we're going to talk about possible health benefits. At first glance, the possible health benefits of mushroom appear to be numerous. And I have to tell you that in Asian and Eastern medicine, they have for thousands of years used mushrooms in their practice to improve health and to help treat diseases. But actually, over the years, mushrooms have been attributed to producing more than 100 medicinal functions, including antioxidant, we just talked about that before, antiviral activities, and functioning to possibly promote protection against cancer, diabetes, heart disease, allergies, cognition, and we'll talk about these individually, weight management, and even oral health. Now, a large majority of the studies, and this is being produced by Rutgers Extension, so everything has to be research-based, and they want to indicate that a large majority of the studies are in vitro studies. So they're done in a test tube or a petri dish. They have not necessarily all been, animal studies have not necessarily been done, and studies on humans haven't necessarily been done. So in those studies, the results confirm that mushrooms could be considered a functional food and may contribute to the prevention of these chronic diseases if they're consumed as part of a regular diet. And it's also important to note that these studies were conducted using both solids and extracts. And therefore, there could be a definite difference in the effect. And if you're eating whole foods and mushrooms and the effect is from the extract, then that starts a whole nother theory of the way to use mushrooms to improve health. But as again, these haven't been done, these aren't animal studies, and they haven't been done on humans either. So let's talk more specifically about cancer. So in Asian countries, they've been used, as I said, for centuries. And there are written records, actually, as far back as 199 AD of use of shiitake mushrooms for medical use. They started studying them because they noticed that mushroom farmers did not have the same rate of cancer deaths as other people. So they wanted to study the mushrooms to see if there was something that would that was leading to that from actually being in contact with the mushrooms. So research was first on isolated compounds in a food item, and most of the time that's what happens, and it definitely happened with mushrooms. So specific compounds were studied to determine their potential health benefits. But again, that's the whole thing about the extract versus the whole mushroom. So let me just see, we said, right, reishi, shiitake, maitake, used alone, they actually used alone and in conjunction with chemotherapy and radiation therapy. And they've been found to increase the likelihood of cancer cell death and also decreasing the spread of cancer cells. So some of this research, I guess, they aren't research studies, they just noticed that in using them because of the history of this and using them with chemotherapy and radiation, that it can improve the outcomes of some kinds of cancer. And A lot of this is due to a polysaccharide, which is a very large carbohydrate, which you might or might not have heard of, called beta-glucan. And it's a fiber found in mushroom and plant foods such as oats, barley, seaweed, and algae. And it's well known for contribution to immune function, and that could lead to cancer prevention and suppression. And if you look at supplements that are immune functions, that are to help to boost your immune system, a lot of times if you turn over the label and see what's in it, you'll find that mushrooms are definitely a big part of any immune formula. So there are promising study results indicating the potential for them to have a positive effect on some types of breast cancer, specifically estrogen receptor positive tumors. But larger population studies have shown no association. So there's a need for more studies, and they're basing a lot of this, the large population study, on the nurses study, which went on for years and years and years. And I've always contended that nurses probably don't have the best health habits. But in any event, in those larger population studies, they've shown no association. But that does not necessarily mean that they are not, that they don't have these properties. And more studies are actually needed, controlled blind studies to see whether or not there really is, they can support this. Because obviously, if they're using it already in conjunction with chemotherapy and radiation, and anecdotally finding an improvement in the cell death of cancer and decreasing in metastasis, then there's something to that. Diabetes and heart disease. So type 2 diabetes, it lowers the fasting blood glucose and the serum insulin. And there have been positive results in lowering fasting blood glucose increased total and LDL cholesterol and triglycerides, and an increase in the HDL. Now, the LDL is the bad cholesterol that deposits cholesterol in your arteries, and the good cholesterol, the HDL cholesterol, is the type you want because that takes it away. So it decreases the bad cholesterol, and triglycerides are also a problem for some people with diabetes. They're very high, and it helps reduce triglycerides, and it also increases the good HDL, the good lipoproteins, so that it will help protect your heart. And possible benefits from beta-glucans could go as far as preventing weight gain also, which could be important in metabolic syndrome, which is a syndrome that is defined as several symptoms, including large waist circumference, high blood pressure, high fasting blood glucose levels, high triglycerides, and/or low HDL, the good cholesterol levels. So beta-glucans can positively affect a metabolic syndrome, and having metabolic syndrome can increase the risk of type 2 diabetes and heart disease. So there is some positive benefit to this. And again, population studies still find no association, but individual studies in vitro are finding that this might be true. And I think what happens also is that sometimes this is anecdotal. Some people know that mushrooms have these benefits, and they'll just use them in their practice and find that these things are true. But unless you have a controlled double-blind placebo study, it's not going to be an accepted outcome. But there is possibility in the future. So other possible health benefits. So in neurodegenerative diseases, now the research is very preliminary on this, and they actually have done studies in mice, and there's possibly a protective effect, especially using mushrooms enriched with vitamin D2. There's vitamin D3 and vitamin D2, and vitamin D2 is the type of vitamin D that you will get from plants and mushrooms. And it's ergocalciferol, for whatever reason, if you need to know that. And there's possible protective effects in the brain, leading to a lowering of dementia and Alzheimer's disease, or a positive effect on the risk and occurrence of those diseases. So the main one they're studying is lion's mane, and it's the main one that's being studied for relationship to brain health. And the potential to prevent and/or treat diseases, dementia, depression, disorder, and cognitive impairment. So they are doing animal studies, and that's the first step to getting them into population studies. And they're also found to possibly aid in sleep quality. So again, if you look at some of the supplements out there to help you sleep, some of the herbal ones, if you look at the ingredients, you will see mushrooms in some of them. They're also associated with maintenance of good bacteria in the gut. So they have a probiotic effect, a prebiotic, I'm sorry, because of the fiber, they have a prebiotic effect. And they also might help with laxation, which means keeping your bowels moving. So, you know, I don't see any downside to eating mushrooms at this point. And all of these things are potential, you know, that more and more research they do, the more and more potential they find for it to have these positive effects. So satiety and satiety and weight management. So it has a high fiber content. So that's always good because it gives you a sense of feeling full. And and it can be substituted for high fat meats. And we talked about, I think talked about using it in place of a hamburger or, you know, during grilling. So it's substitution for high fat meats found to be satisfying, and that also will lower your caloric intake. It does not increase adding mushrooms to your diet does not necessarily increase your caloric intake, which is good to know because there's some things that people add to their diets that increase the caloric intake and would be a problem if you have for weight management. And as we said, they might also benefit lipid levels, high blood pressure, inflammatory markers, all these things. They also have a lot of phenolics, carotenoids, ascorbic acid, all very strong antioxidants. And we talked about phenolics when we talked about tea and chocolate. And they help guard our cells from damage that can lead to disease. And that's what, you know, the antioxidants are very important. So there are a lot of good reasons, I think, to, and even though this is preliminary research and a lot of it's anecdotal, there are a lot of good reasons to, again, I'm making a pitch for including mushrooms in your diet. So what are the recommendations? Of course, to enjoy a variety of mushroom types because different mushrooms have different antioxidants and they have different minerals and vitamins. And so since they have the ability to prevent chronic diseases, it's important to include them in your diet. They're definitely packed with all those things, the antioxidants, the fiber, the vitamins, the minerals, and, you know, including these as part of a healthful plant-based diet. And we're always plugging a plant-based diet, which means a diet that has more fruits and vegetables than it does protein foods, or even grains, fruits, vegetables than protein foods. And you can substitute mushrooms for, you know, high fat meats. So they're looking for more research findings, and, you know, as they're reported, there will be more research findings that you will see. If you're interested, you can email me and I can send you some of the research that backed up a lot of the facts that I shared with you tonight. So also here are sites that you can go to. The Mushroom Council, you can get a lot of recipes from the Mushroom Council, and that's an email there. And again, if you can't copy these, you can email me and I'll be happy to. And I'm Judy KG at redbanklibrary.org. And I will send you these links. As I said, I'll also send you the research if you're interested. And the American Institute for Cancer Research, if you're interested in some of the research being done in cancer. And then Simon & Schuster's Guide to Mushrooms it's from 1982, and it's an old edition, but it's still basically true. As I said, the mushroom classifications that were developed during the 17th and 18th century still stand today. So that's just a good guide to mushrooms. But again, I would caution anybody who is an amateur to be very careful about harvesting mushrooms on your own. And then there's a paper about the biodiversity of fungi, their role in human life, and that's from 2005. And if you're interested in more information about exactly how they are important to soil health and the cycle of the plant cycle, you can also email me because I have a couple of sites that I can recommend that you go see. Now, if you're really a mushroom festival or mushroom fanatic, there is actually an annual mushroom festival in Kennett Square, Pennsylvania. It did not take place, I think, in 2019. It came back into 20. It's been off and on, but it will be back this year on September 11th on State Street in Kennett Square. And that basically wraps it up. And I don't know if anybody has any questions. I left some time for questions, comments. Anything? Anybody?
Well, I thought that was interesting about lion's mane.
Mhm.
I had a doctor recommend that I add that to my diet, a powdered lion's mane every day. And he also recommended turkey tail. Now, when you go buy these powdered mushrooms, they're fairly expensive at the health food store. And I don't know. My local markets don't sell lion's mane or turkey tail. So
You probably have to
just,
get them online, I think. You might try get online, seeing if you can.
oh, you mean like to get the powdered stuff?
The
Yeah.
powdered or even the fresh. I mean, I haven't seen lion's mane in any store that I've been in.
No, I don't think I'm going to find it fresh. Anyway, that was, yeah, I don't remember what all you said, but there was a lot of things that were interesting about that. And the other thing was, yeah, I don't know. I've never heard of this. Expose it to UV light and it'll
That was
increase
new
the
to me
blood.
as well. Yeah.
Yeah. And
I
What's
thought that
interesting
was very interesting too.
Right. What's
Yeah.
interesting about it is it's true for us. If if we're out in the sunlight with the UV light is what creates vitamin D in our
Right.
skin. So it's interesting that and vitamin D is a very the globally there are major
Yeah.
deficiencies. I wanted to mention one more thing about mushrooms, and I forget where, and it was definitely a reputable site, and I did not make note of it, but they're coming out with mushroom gummies. And I noticed that in the one or two that I felt reputable mushroom gummies, I don't know if they're less expensive, I really didn't look at the price, lion's mane was included in both of the formulas. So lion's mane, they must be doing a lot of research on it, so.
Well, it's suddenly very popular in health food circles. I don't know if that means there's research or it's just another fad food, but yeah.
Well, this is based on research. They would not extension. It's Rutgers Cooperative Extension, and everything in here is based on research. And I can, if you're interested, I can forward you exactly what studies they got that information from. But yeah, now that I'm seeing this, and also, whoops, sorry. Here we go. And what you said that your doctor recommended. It's really interesting.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
Oh.
Also, Judy, there's a lot of mushroom teas now. I mean, for the last 2-3 years, the Red Bank Farmers Market actually sells mushroom tea, and that's become really popular. You had a question from Eileen Reynolds too.
Yeah, no, I see that.
Okay.
Eileen, off the top of my head, I can, except to tell you it's lower fat and there would be different minerals, and but I will research that for you and get back to you with a more specific answer. Grilled chicken breast, I mean, these are animal foods, so the proteins are going to be different and the fat content might be different and the mineral and vitamin content might be different, but I can definitely get back to you with a comparison if you're,
Can you send me the information on the UV light?
Yes, I will. Hold on. Let me find a pen here. I should be more better prepared. All right. So, and
I didn't quite get your email. Sorry, Judy.
that's all right. It's Judy. I should put it on here. It's Judy KG at redbanklibrary.org. And I really should do a slide with that. So, Anne, you want the studies on UV, and Eileen, you want a comparison of mushrooms, portobello, like a portobello mushroom, to a grilled chicken breast or hamburger. I can do that. Mushroom versus chicken breast or hamburger. It's as I said, one is an animal food, one is a plant food, but I can definitely look at, give you a side-by-side comparison. That is not a problem. So, what can I, hold on a second. I don't know why I can't see those screens. Okay, I don't know why I can't see everybody, but I can. I guess I need.
Eileen left, I think.
Yeah, she did. Actually, she did. Yeah. She told me she could only stay for half an hour.
Yeah.
So, yeah, okay.
So maybe email her.
Yeah, and I don't know what, there we go. Any other questions or comments, or Linda, do you want to, I mean, I think I covered, I don't know when you came in, but I did definitely cover the third kingdom.
Oh, yeah. I saw it from most of the program, Judy.
So do you, so
and
I just want to
covered it all.
let you know, you tell your son, I actually did cover that topic, so,
I know.
yeah.
He was here for the first 15, 20 minutes.
All right, so hopefully he saw
But the one thing is foraging. I mean, you know, I told you my son does a lot of foraging of mushrooms, and that always is a little scary, I think. We also grow wine cap mushrooms.
Okay, that, I don't know anything about those. What about those?
They're large. They look different. They're a red color. They're
Oh.
beautiful.
What are
And
they
we had them
Dark-
maybe 3 weeks ago. We stopped having them.
What are they
But,
called?
I think they're called wine cap mushrooms. I'll check with him.
I want to look those
Yeah.
up. Wine cap.
Yeah,
And-
they can be seeded on your property too.
Right. Well, we
Or
have like
stored.
you know, a tree stump and layers in between the different stumps are different layers of mushrooms that we grow.
Right.
Cool.
And that would be where you would grow them, because as I say, they need a host to grow
Yes.
them.
Yeah.
So that's interesting. As far as the foraging goes, I mean, that was that slide that said, look, you really have to be careful if you're an amateur. Your son has done a lot of studying, and, you
Yeah.
know, he's still up walking, so he's fine. He
Yeah.
obviously knows what he's doing. But yeah, you do have to be careful. And that would be my only caveat to foragers, that this is not something like, you know, berries or grasses or other fruits and stuff like that. This could be a lot more serious. And the problem is that a lot of toxic mushrooms look like non-toxic mushrooms. So if you think you're eating one thing and you're not. So that would be my only caveat in that respect, that, anyway, so.
Yeah. Well, they're certainly becoming very big in the foraging world.
Yeah,
You know, much, much more popular than they used to be, but it's one of the big items that people are foraging.
And that's
Is
probably why they made that slide, the one with the magnifying glass, which says you really need to be careful. I mean, foraging is great, but you really need to know what you're doing. Even in terms of berries, there are some berries that are poisonous too. So
Absolutely.
usually they're easier to tell, but does anybody else have anything they want to add? And Claire, you're more than welcome. And I can give you, Claire, any of the follow-up, because of course I work with you. So if you
Yeah.
if you want any of
Okay.
the follow-up or anything, I'm happy to give that to you.
Yeah, thanks. No, I'm just taking it all in.
Yeah.
It's great information, and
And it'll be up on our YouTube channel. We always, this is being recorded. So
okay, I'll relook at the beginning of it.
Yeah,
Thanks.
yeah.
Yeah, great
Hey.
information. Just
Yeah.
another reason to eat more mushrooms.
I think so. And let me tell you, those shiitake mushrooms, the shiitake bacon, I get these really great recipes. Like I got one for balsamic onions, has nothing to do with this, but they're all from the avocado board, because they're meant to be eaten with guacamole. So
Okay.
I saw the shiitake mushroom thing, and it was really supposed to be eaten but what I do is I put it on everything else. I mean, it really has, because it has that umami flavor. And it said, the more you dry them, the stronger the umami flavor. And the smoked paprika, not regular paprika, but the smoked paprika, which is now become,
Right.
oh, I love smoked paprika.
That's the thing. Yeah.
That right.
and if you think of it, if you feel like it, jot down that recipe. I
Okay.
just sent you an email, but the shiitake bacon sounds very interesting.
It does. It really does.
It's
Yeah.
an easy recipe. I now
Yep.
just do whatever I feel like, but the first time you do it, you're going to want to sort of have an idea of
Right.
of the ratio of
Right.
stuff. So I will definitely
Right.
get that to you. Yeah. Last time I just winged it and it was fine. And usually what I do also, because I love the smoked paprika, once it's done, I shake a little more on it. And when foods are warm, they absorb more of the spices. So sometimes it's good to spice your food after and not before. That's why sometimes the sauces are put on after and they're not necessarily cooked in the sauces. So
Oh, cool.
That's great.
anything else? I'll make a pitch
Thank
for my August program. Is going to be on berries,
Oh, good.
which is another powerhouse with antioxidants and phenolics and everything like that. All kinds of, the colors, what am I saying? The phytonutrients and things like that. So that's going to be really good. And then of course in October we're going to be doing a talk about harvest just in general, the health benefits of a plant-based diet. So
That sounds good.
looking forward to
Alright, great.
oh, I just want to let everybody know, well, maybe not. I'm considering, I don't know, and you might be regularly on my list that regularly, do you ever sign up or you just get the automatically get the link every month?
I saw it, I think on the Red Bank. I seem
All
to be
right,
on the Red
okay.
Bank listserv.
Because there are a number of people that are getting well, hold on, let me just hang on one second.